All right, we are back for another episode of Course Heading. In this week's episode, we're going to be covering two episodes. Bill and I had kind of a holiday weekend, got kind of busy with schedule time crunch, so we're going to be kind of a jam-packed, maybe 10 minutes, 10, 12, 15 minutes longer than usual. Bill and I try to keep these 15 to 20-ish minutes. This week it's going to be a little bit longer, maybe a 30-minute. Bill and I are going to be talking about these past two episodes of Lower Decks. But before, how you doing this morning, Bill?
Doing really well. Looking forward to talking about these two very different episodes.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. These two episodes do feel very different from each other. Some positives and negatives on both fronts, I think, on both episodes. But yeah, Bill, overall thoughts, just kind of begin with the first episode. Let's start with the episode.
Let's do Mogatu Gumatu, the fourth episode of season 2. Yep. Yeah. I'm pretty mixed on this one. I think I really like the story. One of the things they're doing this season that I kind of like a lot is that they're pairing the characters differently. I think in the first season, it was very, very often they got really set in a routine of it was Boimler and Mariner, and it was Rutherford and Tendi kind of usually paired off. And Mogatu Gumatu does a nice job of putting Boimler and Rutherford together for a lot of the episode, and that felt fresh and different. And I like them exploring Mariner's sort of complicated past. You know, she's obviously like they've thrown in so many references of things she's done, places she's been, ships she's served on. It does kind of lead to questions about like what is the story here? Like they don't totally know. It kind of leans further into some of the stuff they explored in the previous episode. We'll always have Tom
There's
Paris,
some mystery.
Tendi and Mariner.
There's some mystery.
There's some mystery there.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of things that they don't know about each other. They know each other professionally. They work together. They know their current selves really, really well, but they don't know a lot about each other's pasts. And I love the exploration of that. I love the fact that we're dealing with Mogatu, and the story, the framework of the episode is fun. Planet-based chaos going on down there. Last Outpost Ferengi, like all the
there's
stuff
some great deep cuts in this.
There's some really cool framework around this story. For me, the issue is the humor again, and that's sort of where Lower Decks is hot and cold for me. Sometimes I think the humor really works. Sometimes it kind of doesn't for me, subjectively, personally. And I think this was an episode where they went a little on the gross outside in terms of the kind of humor they were playing with. And that isn't necessarily my comfort zone, my brand of, go-to humor. And that's where it kind of fell a little short for me personally. What about you? How'd you feel about it?
Again, I would have to agree with you. I think I've got some mixed feelings now that I've had some time to kind of step away from it. It's some positives here. I like what they're doing this season. I like that they're Bill kind of talked about it, the different pairings and putting them in situations to have that typical feel-good kind of Star Trek moment where they solve a problem not the way you expect it. So I really like that. I like that they're continuing this kind of exploration of getting to know each other. And I think there's some relatability. Bill talked about it last week about how you've got your work family and your work friends, but you don't really know a lot about them. And I think this is another kind of exploration of that kind of idea of co-workers kind of getting to know each other. And I think that's, if I'm in my headcanon, that's part of the Starfleet experience, right? You build these relationships with your crewmates, but do you really know them? So again, this is another, just an extension of that kind of idea of getting to know your crewmates and lower deckers. So it's I think it hits a home run on that sense. I do like the deep cuts, like Bill mentioned. But yeah, I think there's, I think if I'm looking back through our episodes, I think Bill and I are kind of in similar boats where there's a line, I think, that Lower Decks walks used very gracefully. But I think we can both agree that I think they maybe took one or two.
They blew by it.
Five, yeah. I think they cannonballed.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm being completely honest, I'm not surprised actually, because I think I think Rick and Morty kind of do some of this stuff similar to in that kind of genre. They do that type of like Family Guy type of kind of humor at times. And I think going into this, I knew they were gonna maybe do some stuff like that. I'm surprised that this didn't happen maybe sooner. There's maybe some stuff in season 1 that I could take or leave in that kind of regard, but this is kind of completely. Bill said it. They blew past it. They cannonballed into that kind of territory. So I
remember. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And just to wrap up my final thoughts. I'm trying to put that kind of aside because I know there's going to be some fans of it, and so
there are.
That's fine with me. So I try to focus on the positives here, and there's some great positives here, but there's also some I could take or leave. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on some of the stuff you just said, I remember when Lower Decks was starting, you were much more familiar, or at least you had some familiarity with Rick and Morty. Some of the stuff Mike McMahon's done in the past. I was not. I had never seen it. I was like passingly familiar, like I knew it existed and it was out there, but you had actually seen some of it and you kind of knew. So I think you went into the show kind of knowing the kind of humor that he was probably going to be playing in.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you might have been braced for it a little more than I am. And I've gotten used to it over the season and a half, and I love Lower Decks, as I'm about to talk about with the next episode. It hits more often than it doesn't for me. But there are points, and like all of this stuff, but I think we've touched on it before, most especially with the humor, it's totally subjective, and we all have our own comfort zones in terms of what really lands for us on the humor front. And this one, I just felt like it delved a little further into the gross out. It pushes boundaries that
I think I don't know if I'm getting really. I think it's how do I put this without getting demonetized on YouTube? The observational aspect of that scene, I think, puts it over the. Yes. I think I could maybe get on board with some of the other stuff, but I think I'm trying to be the observational aspect of it. Just
everyone who watched it knows exactly what I'm talking about. And to be honest, like it's not even so much that that is insane, and it has become. It's going to be like, I guarantee you, that is the most memed thing that will come out of this season. I think. Yeah. I think unless something they do is completely insane in these.
Which I don't know how they could go. Well, I can stand corrected. You know.
That's going to be a meme that lives forever in Star Trek social media out there, I think. So props to them for that. They found a moment that was going to
made a splash.
That's going to land. They did, and but and it's not even so much. It's not just that. I don't want to like. I don't want to lead people to think that it's just that thing that made a lot of news and made a lot of waves that has me going like, it's not for me. It's the humor in general. There's a lot of stuff in here that I just felt was
overly
leaning
silly.
Into the gross out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shaq's tasting the dung.
Yeah. The tour guide.
Yeah. Yep.
That guy.
Who I liked.
That's right.
Who I liked.
Books,
that was a neat character.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, we don't see it, but there's the Noblian, who I love to see. Yeah. They had horrible endings too. They just embraced the insanity of the violence, the wackiness. They just push the boundaries, and I appreciate that they're doing that, and that they're fearless, and and that they're going for broke. But it definitely left me a little cooler than others. I always ask on Twitter. I put up a poll every time. That there's a new episode. I say grade the episode, and this episode has its fans, and I also ranked the episodes on Twitter and asked people to do the same. And this is an episode that varies a lot in where people are putting it, just like all of them. I mean, there's really no consensus at this point for where these episodes fit. So some people are really fans of Mugatu Gumatsu. There's things in it that I really like, and things in it that I didn't love.
What
about episode 5, An Embarrassment of Duplers. What are your general takeaways there?
General takeaways, I think this might be top 3 of the season. I think it's one of my favorites, I think, so far. Again, another interesting... we kind of go back to basics with the structure, with the pairings. Again, we're paired up a little bit here, a lot of it here, with the as far as like the crew and stuff like that. But I think it gets back to the core, Lower Decks, in that there's some positives of being kind of that camaraderie of a Lower Deck crewman, but yeah, I really liked it. I think there's some funny moments that landed for me, some that didn't, obviously, but yeah, I think it's overly positive. I think it had some really great deep cuts as well. But yeah, I think just overly positive. I think getting back to the core of Lower Decks, I think is good. Especially, I think this is a well-placed episode, especially after... Yeah. Because I think they knew... Mike McGinn knew this previous episode was going to be a little bit divisive and rock the boat a little bit, make some waves. So I think this is kind of gets back to the core of Lower Decks and the positives of being maybe lower on the ranks. But yeah, it tackled some big things. It tackled some Mariner. We found out the Mariner was still kind of upset at Boimler and things like that. So it does some big things. It's not like an easy write off episode. I think it does some big things for the characters as well.
Yeah, I think both stories kind of are exploring some of the things that were left over from season 1 and kind of tying up
loose ends.
Some of the hangover loose ends. Exactly. Yeah. Where Boimler and Mariner stand with each other post Boimler transfer and arguably abandoning her. And to find out that the grass isn't always greener. Rutherford's still battling some memory loss and some new identity issues and how that relates to Tendi. And I think this episode really explores where those two things stand and kind of moves those relationships forward in meaningful ways. And I love that. I think this is like, you kind of said it, this feels like a trip back into like safe waters a little bit. Like this is like Lower Decks doing exactly what Lower Decks does best. In terms of, this episode feels like it had a ton of heart that Mugatu Gumatu doesn't. Yeah. It has. Mugatu Gumatu has a sharp edge and is throwing elbows and is rough and tumble. This one feels like a nice
comfort food type of.
Yeah, exactly. A cup of hot chocolate with a warm blanket and a hug is what this one kind of gives off. Even like the Duplers, those aliens feel so like, it's a thing only Lower Decks could do with what those aliens do and what they're trying to deal with. But other than the fact that they are duplicating when they feel insecure, like walking on eggshells and dealing on tense diplomatic like footing is not new to Lower Decks and to Star Trek. Like that's a trope that is well explored and feels perfect to kind of like play with. So I love them. I love how specifically Lower Decks they are, but how comfortably Star Trek it is at the same time. That storyline and who they are and what they're doing with them. And we just did a Trek Live episode on star bases, space stations, and we talked in that episode a little bit about Starbase 25 and everything that represents and what that is. Love that. I thought that was a really cool setting.
Yeah.
With some awesome production design, and I love the vastness of that place and stuff we see there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing
there's a lot of positives here.
Yeah.
With this one.
One thing that I also really liked is finally a Starfleet get together that people want to go to. Like I feel like in TNG it's always and in Deep Space Nine and all the other shows, it's always a chore to go to these things. Yeah. But now it's here, let me bump my levels down. I'm just really excited. I just love that it's finally like, and it fits well with the show as well. You'd think that this lower tier kind of Cerritos type of, well, I forget the class of the ship, kills me. but
California class.
California class. They take pride in that there's a California class there and all these things, and it's something that they want to go to, and then they kind of do like a cute way of flipping it on its head, that it's not always, the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Which I really do love. But yeah, it's cool to see like a Starfleet function that people want to get into and want to like, I don't know, go to. So that's one thing as well.
They want to go, but I love. There's a great moment when Boimler gets in, can't get in with Mariners. He's there by himself and is noticing Captain Shelby's there.
Yeah.
People that he knows about. Cuts, and is like excited to meet. Yeah. But he's by himself, and there's that great little moment when somebody's like walking up towards him and walks by him to go greet somebody else, and he realizes he's there by himself, and he's just kind of standing around, doesn't have anybody to talk to. And it's not the destination, it's not the party, it's being there with people that
the person,
it's the people and the connections that he has to build, and he's doing that, and I love that's what the story at the bar is all about. They go there and they realize Kirk and Spock were once where they were, like maybe at some point they didn't have the connections to get into the big party, or like in the connections is what he's looking for and what he needs, and I think realizing that he's already doing that is poignant and is really great. I found the ending touching and full of heart and exactly what I'm looking for in Lower Decks, and it's one of my favorite episodes of the show. It's definitely my favorite episode of the season, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Yeah. I love the model stuff with Rutherford building a little model that shoots phasers and has a warp core in it. Like, to me, that's really cute and awesome. And,
and the data bubble bath too. Like, there's production elements, little things like that.
It's all great.
It's such a great touch.
And that's such a tight rope walk that this show constantly is doing. It's like finding the right references for the right moments, and not overloading with it and not making it completely about it. But if you nail that balance and you have the right stuff and the right combination of reference with story and character, like when it all comes together in the right equation, it really works. And I think this episode had that perfect sort of amalgamation of all of it working together, because there's a ton of stuff in this. References around that space station when they're inside, flying through in the little Argo buggy. There's a ton of stuff they're passing by. There's eye candy in there that people will be dissecting for years. And that's awesome, but it's not at the expense of the story, and it's not
overly in your face, like getting too cute with it. It's like it's a great. And I think that adds an element of rewatchability. Like, as a fan, you're going to want to go back to these episodes and look for those little things, like we get to see in some of these other episodes of Lower Decks. Even in the season, I feel like there's some great background elements that I think will add to the rewatchability of it and make me want to go back for years to come. So, absolutely. Really good stuff, for sure.
Which favorite episode of the season so far? Is it this one? Is it?
I think it's this one. I terrible with episode names, but I think this one and the one with they go to the collector ship, I think, are the two that I would probably cite as the best of the. I gotta watch them all again to kind of give my overall rankings, but that's probably where I would go, and because I don't want to give too much away because it was so recent, so I want to give time to breathe. But I think this episode and maybe the collector ship one are probably up there for me as far as best of the season. So, which is cool. I love the consistency early. I think the first couples. In any season, definitely have some rocky starts, but it feels very consistent. I'm happy with how this season is going. I think they're doing a perfect job of balancing those feel good moments, even in episodes that I don't particularly am like over the moon about.
Yeah.
I think they still have the core Star Trek feel good kind of moments. Some of the humor obviously doesn't land, but I think, if I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't say that there's, it's not a complete departure from, which again that was my kind of worry to begin with Lower Decks, is was it going to still feel Star Trek and still have true Star Trek kind of I was scared that it was just going to have a Star Trek filter with just like an everyday like animated series type of thing. So, but to me, some of these episodes really do feel like Star Trek to me. So,
yeah, I agree. I think they found that kind of, even in episodes that I haven't loved, like Mugatu Gumatu and like the season premiere this year. It, like even when it doesn't totally land, it does feel at home in the Star Trek universe, which to me was the critical and biggest hurdle for the show to clear, because it is such a departure aesthetically and stylistically from anything that's been done before. I mean, we've had animation before, like take or leave that show, but like that's not so much the thing. It's a comedy, and it's light, and it's self-aware of the continuity, like all that stuff being here. Like there were some hurdles to clear, and I think it has done that as a series. Individual episodes, where they fit on the spectrum of how much I personally love them aside, I think the show has cleared that bar.
Yeah. Cool.
And I feel like moving forward, we're kind of getting into the second half of the second season already. We just did 5 episodes, so we're halfway there. And I feel like after this week's episode, I do feel like it's kind of open season. Like I really do feel like they kind of tied up some of the carryover stuff from the first season with the character interactions. The one thing that I do think is still lingering, at least this season, that I expect to continue to play and chart in this past episode, the 5th one. I think they did a really nice job of continuing the story with Captain Freeman, kind of being, she's aware, she's sort of being evaluated and wants to advance and knows where she fits in the hierarchy, and that's kind of that feels like a definite like continuing story arc moving forward.
Yeah, she said,
but I feel like
sorry.
Good.
She's had to deal with patience, and I think especially in this episode, I think there's some great patience too, with kind of that whole kind of comedic. I don't even know what to call it. B plot, A plot, with the duplicating guest on board. Interesting, kind of fun little. But yeah, I think you're right. There's still some, maybe not just out of this world, like all-encompassing kind of story arc, but there's some definitely continuity there with her dealing with that stuff.
Yeah, very much agreed.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I think that'll about do it. We like these to be sort of rapid fire, not in depth. There's a ton of great content out there for deeper dives into the references and the Easter eggs. You can find a lot of this stuff on places like Trek Core, Trek Central, Trek Movie.
Our Discord server.
Our Discord server, people, you can join that, and there's always people chatting it up and diving into those things. We're just looking to share our basic, quick reactions and what we're thinking coming out of these episodes.
Yeah. We'll be back next week to talk about more Lower Decks, and the Trek Lab main show will be back with some more Star Trek content. So if you want to get have more discussion, like we said, definitely Twitter and where we have Discord server, the 2 best ways to do that. Keep the discussion going. We've got just a dedicated tab for that where you can talk about spoiler free, whatever you want to talk about, bring up. It's always a good time. But Bill and I will be back next week to talk about the next episode of Lower Decks. The title does escape me at the moment, but
it's not out yet. I don't know what it is.
Dang. Okay.
I don't think anybody does yet.
But yeah, we'll be back to talk about that. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks everybody. Take care.